Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moments. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Tales of Herding Gods based on novel. So let's start. The dragon Qin suddenly became excited and said in a low voice, "Cult Master, do you think he looks slightly similar to Patriarch?" Qin Mu was stunned. He indeed felt that the two looked similar and couldn't help having a favorable impression of him. He greeted, "Heavenly Saint Cult Master Qin Mu pays his respects to the owner of this place." The youth returned his greeting and his etiquette was that of Eternal Peace Empire. "Cult Master Qin, Jiku pays his respect to you. Not long ago, Cult Master's portrait has been spread throughout the whole of West Earth and your reputation rose and gave rise to a commotion. Many young talents are planning on meeting Cult Master Qin. Over here please, Cult Master Qin." Qin Mu's face darkened. Since he'd brought Xiongqia with him, he had planned to have Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor and Xiongqiu to be the vanguard. Their reputations were much far spread than his, as one was the reputable Imperial Preceptor of Eternal Peace Empire while the other one was the former Palace Master of True Heaven Palace. They would naturally catch West Earth's attention, and in that case, no one would notice him and Xiongqia, which would make their journey much safer. His motive for coming was to familiarize himself with the social customs of West Earth. In the future, Eternal Peace Empire would definitely move their troops here and annex this place, adding it to its territory. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's goal was a top-down approach. By getting True Heaven Palace into their hands before calling war and having it surrender and pay allegiance to Eternal Peace could minimize the casualties by a lot. But Qin Mu hadn't expected that because of Pan Gong So, that scoundrel's meddling, his presence in West Earth would be known by the whole world while his wanted posters would fill every city and town in West Earth. Brother Jiku is courteous. Qin Mu walked with him and saw that the men and women around Jiku were all not weak, possessing quite remarkable abilities. However, they were all throwing unpleasant looks at him, unable to wait for a fight. But with Jiku as the landowner, they didn't make a move directly. Qin Mu looked at Jiku and was slightly suspicious. The young man looked somewhat similar to the young patriarch and the manner was also in the style of Eternal Peace Empire and not West Earth circular construction. Jiku's etiquette was also the familiar one, so could he really be the result of Patriarch going to West Earth for a visiting marriage? That's not right. He doesn't look too old, but some 16-17 years old. Even though Patriarch is slightly charismatic and flirtatious, he was still just a bunch of old bones 17 years ago, so how could he still run over to West Earth for a visiting marriage? Then again, Patriarch also looked like a youth, so Jiku might have also cultivated the creation techniques in great educational heavenly devil scriptures and thus halted his aging. Jiku led everyone to a tall building, and there were vehicles arriving from everywhere. The people coming had to have extraordinary status. Qin Mu saw some which rode on clouds which were tied to an ancient tree. There were all kinds of strange beasts and even a small mountain. The people who could enter the manor could only be those who had quite a reputation. They all looked young and were probably various important figures coming to attend Flowery Mountain Festival. After all, no one would choose an old man or old woman as their partner for Flowery Mountain Festival. Jiku invited them to take their seats, and Qin Mu suppressed the doubt in his heart while sitting down. Jiku clapped his hands and a servant fetched a painting. The young host unscrolled it, and it portrayed none other the Devil Cult Master. He then said with a smile, "True Heaven Palace sent Cult Master Qin's painting over and said that you are a fugitive from great ruins. I wondered if this daring Cult Master Qin would enter my fragrant bloom city, but I never thought that he would really do it. Cult Master Qin has remarkable skills and huge guts, so come and take a look at the elites of my West Earth. The female hero here is our fragrant bloom city's Yu Jingfang with a deep family background. The reason why Sister Yu's surname is Yu is because her ancestor is from the branch of West Earth's Yu family. Why Cult Master Qin should know it, right?" Qin Mu nodded and said, "The Palace Master of True Heaven Palace today belongs to Yu family." Jiku smiled and said, "Sister Yu has 10,000 grand fields, 18 mountain ranges, and is the successor of Yu family. Her cultivation is on 7 stars realm." Qin Mu nodded at Yu Jingfang with a smile. She gave a slight smile in return. Jiiku then spoke again. There are also men who are in charge of households in West Earth. This is the young master of West Earth's Heavenly Province sect, Yu Qingshan. Heavenly Province sect is led by men and their cultivation methods are similar to those of Eternal Peace Empire. They are quite well known in West Earth. Brother Yu Qingshan's cultivation is on 6 Directions realm. Qin Mu greeted him. Yu Qingshan was rather conceited and said, even though I'm on 6 Directions realm, the spells and divine arts of my Heavenly Province sect have ancient origins. They were imparted to us by gods. Qin Mu's interest was aroused and he said with a smile, I've seen a lot of techniques of gods. They are indeed not bad. Now this lady is extraordinary, but she's not from our Fragrant Bloom City. She's from True Heaven Palace, Senior Sister Ting Fang, Jiiku said. Qin Mu looked at that woman and saw that she was coming forward in splendid clothes. She had extraordinary good looks and he praised, a garden full of blossoms, Senior Sister Ting Fang has a nice name. Ting Fang smiled and said, Cult Master Qin, the elders in the palace want to bring you to justice. It's not me who's against you, so please pardon me. Jiiku then introduced everyone else, and that had quite the backgrounds. Qin Mu smiled at every single one of them. The cultivations of those people were high, and they were considered quite impressive in the younger generation. Once the introduction was concluded, Qin Mu smiled and asked, Brother Jiiku has introduced so many people, so why don't you introduce yourself? Jiiku laughed and said, I'm just the landowner of this place. Fragrant Bloom City is a property that my parents left for me and is nothing worth mentioning. Cult Master Qin, with all the elites coming forth and wanting to take you down, how will you react? Qin Mu looked around and said sincerely, brothers and sisters, you all look like talented people, so why did you come to die? Once Jiiku said that, everyone in the building sneered endlessly. Qin Mu paid no attention to it and smiled. If it wasn't great ruin separating West Earth and Eternal Peace, West Earth would have been long ago wiped out by Eternal Peace. Truth be told, your paths, skills, and divine arts have already fallen behind times compared to those of Eternal Peace whose spells and divine arts are slightly behind times too in my eyes, so I'm seeking change. Brothers and sisters of West Earth, it's too dangerous to be this close to me. Not to mention those of 6 Directions realm, even the brothers and sisters of 7 Stars realm, you, and you. When you are so close to me, in my eyes? Come. He pointed at the experts of 7 Stars realm present and shook his head. You guys are all merely corpses that can move and talk. The only question is when you guys will become corpses. Everyone was overflowing with murderous intent. Yu Qingshan suddenly stood up and sneered. Cult Master Qin, how arrogant of you. City Lord Jiiku, you are the owner of this place, and I would very much like to meet this Cult Master Qin. Is it possible? Jiiku laughed and said, everyone here is guests attending Flowery Mountain Festival of Fragrant Bloom City, so why do we need to draw our daggers? Everyone should find a lover they admire and have a fun night, wouldn't that be wonderful? Of course, if everyone is insistent on fighting, I won't be able to stop you guys, will I? It was clear that he wanted to watch a show. Yu Qingshan walked out of the building while sneering. Cult Master Qin, come out, I want to profit from True Heaven Palace. Qin Mu revealed a smile and took out a 2-foot metal ball while shaking his head. No need to go down, it's pretty good here. He lifted the metal ball in his hand, and the building instantly shook slightly, gradually sinking into the ground. The building started to creak, and its first level sunk into the ground, followed by the second level, then the third level. Only then did it stop. Everyone was astonished and Jiiku praised. What a heavy ball. Everyone, please take a look. Qin Mu's left hand gently stirred the metal ball as he said, this is my sword pellet. Catcha. The sword pellet split open and 8,000 swords as fine as thread spilled out. Their tips were pointed at the center of the ball. To be able to forge something so exquisite, one not only needed to have extreme craftsmanship, they also needed calculation techniques of the same level. Cold lights reflected off the 8,000 swords, and the 4 walls of the building flowed continuously with lights. They even shone on everyone's faces. Every sword was like the most perfect work of art. Qin Mu lifted the sword pellet up, and it slowly floated up to spin slowly, allowing everyone to see its interior structure. Everyone, without improvement, paths, skills, and divine arts would fall behind times in 100 years, let alone 1,000. Your West Earth's paths, skills, and divine arts were imparted to your ancestors 20,000 years ago to awaken the soul or spirit of all things so they could battle by themselves. However, the activation speed of your divine arts is too slow, and even experts of celestial being realm require a fixed time to activate them. However, divine arts have myriad changes in an instant, so who would give you the time? Let me execute a sword skill so everyone here can give me pointers. Don't move. True Heaven Palace's Ting Fang sneered. If we don't move, aren't we just going to let you kill us? Qin Mu smiled slightly and said, if you want to move, you'll have to pay the consequences. Sword of Founding Emperor. The sword pellet in his hand suddenly split open and swords filled the entire building. When 8,000 swords moved, almost everyone couldn't resist standing up to defend themselves. At that moment, all of the sword lights suddenly vanished, and along with them, even the building seemed to have vanished as well. What replaced it was a sea of blood that covered both heaven and earth. The second move of sword picture, Sword of Founding Emperor, Sea of Blood. Once this move was executed, the vast and mournful feeling came sweeping over. Everyone felt like they could see countless gods and devils struggling in the sea of blood and yelling. Next, they became corpses in the sword lights and sunk into the sea of blood. Sword of Founding Emperor, Sea of Blood. Mountains and rivers exist, vast and obscure heart, looking around left and right, no more people donning the clothes of homeland. At that moment, they heard someone slamming the table and someone shouting angrily. There was also the sound of divine arts colliding and a brief period of clashing. Suddenly, the color of the sea of blood faded away like fleeting time, and they could see the back view of a man carrying a divine sword and turning his head back. Loneliness and decrepitness plucked on their heartstrings. The back view vanished and the building appeared once again. Qin Mu's hand was still lifted up, and in his palm was a sword pellet which was swirling non-stop. All the plates and bowls, as well as the dishes in front of the guests, remained the same as earlier, untouched. Cold sweat broke out on everyone's foreheads, and they hurriedly looked around with frightened eyes. They saw Yu Jinfang's corpse, and that Ting Fang had collapsed on her seat with a red bloodstain at the heart of her brows. There was also 2 corpses of the servants. They had slammed the table in Qin Mu's sword light and tried to contend with his sword light. The only result of that was their deaths. The other people had not moved, and so they were safe. Yu Qingshan's face was pale white, but he hadn't moved. It wasn't because he couldn't see Qin Mu's terrifying sword will, on the contrary, he had clearly felt it, which was why he didn't dare to move. Jiiku waved his hand and there were people who immediately went forward to drag the corpses out. On the seats, everyone's faces were pale white and some were even ashen. The astonishment brought by Qin Mu's move was simply too strong. The sword skill was too fast and made them unable to react. They could only sit there, and this kind of helplessness while awaiting death was not pleasant. It was especially so for the experts of 7 Stars Realm. Even though they could let their primordial spirits leave their bodies, the battle power of the primordial spirit was too strong and the building was too cramped up. Qin Mu's sword was extremely fast, and the sword lights had drowned them before they could even react. Qin Mu's move had an immense power, and every sword had been made using the best materials, thus everyone's lives were on the line. On top of that, their divine arts of all things having spirits and all things having souls were indeed much slower than Qin Mu's sword in activation speed. If they were to fight, they could only try to pull a distance away from him before trying to execute their arts. Because of that, in a building, they didn't have any chance at all. Qin Mu put away his sword pellet and apologized. Brother Jiiku, I hope you will pardon me for dirtying your building. The exquisiteness of Cult Master Qin's sword skill is unmatched, opening my horizons. Even though you struck with countless swords, you didn't damage my building at all. This is then true ability. May I ask if this move is a sword move which was founded after Eternal Peace Empire's reform? Qin Mu shook his head. This move isn't a divine art from after the reform, but was founded 400 to 500 years ago. This move has also fallen behind times, but in West Earth, I can use it to kill all 6 directions and 7 stars practitioners. No one is my match. Even though everyone here is very strong, you are all still inferior to Pangong So. He is much stronger than all of you, able to take this move of mine. At most he will only be heavily injured. Everyone snorted coldly and wanted to say something, but their throats were all hoarse. Their voices were also trembling, and they immediately coughed to cover it up. City Lord Jiku, I have no face to remain here, farewell. Yu Qingshan suddenly cupped his hands and turned to leave. The moment he did so, other people also rose to bid farewell. Soon, the building was only left with Qin Mu and his host. Cult Master Qin, you didn't bring many experts with you this time, only a dragon Qilin on Celestial Being Realm. On the other hand, my West Earth is full of experts, so aren't you afraid of dying here? Jiku asked curiously. Qin Mu smiled in a way that wasn't exactly smiling. Brother Jiku knows the dragon Qilin. Jiku didn't reply and Qin Mu smiled. There are many people who want to kill me, but as of yet, no one has ever succeeded. My journey this time wasn't to challenge all the elites in the world, but to tour the place and explore it. Does Brother Jiku know where's True Heaven Palace? True Heaven Palace is the sacred ground of our West Earth and everyone knows it. Jiku smiled and said, if Cult Master Qin wants to go there, I can point the way for you. Qin Mu gave his thanks and smiled. True Heaven Palace is after me, yet Brother Jiku treats me like a guest of honor. Aren't you afraid True Heaven Palace might cause trouble for you? Jiku laughed loudly and shook his head. Even though True Heaven Palace is strong, they are not at the point of behaving unscrupulously. Even though there's only this sacred ground in the whole of West Earth, it's not True Heaven Palace that's ruling West Earth, but High Heavens. True Heaven Palace won't alarm High Heavens just for this small matter. Come, my man, gift a copy of our West Earth's geographic map to Cult Master Qin. Qin Mu grew solemn. Jiku words had revealed an important piece of information. True Heaven Palace and High Heaven seemed to have some sort of relationship. A servant came forward and offered the geographic map of West Earth to Qin Mu. As he took it, he couldn't resist asking, City Lord Jiku, your manor seems to have been built in the style of eternal peace. Jiku smiled. Cult Master Qin, you should go. Killing Ting Fang of True Heaven Palace and Yu Jin Fang of Yu family is a huge trouble by itself. Those people who left in a hurry aren't going to attend Flowery Mountain Festival, but will report and call for reinforcements. If you don't go, you won't be able to leave anymore. Qin Mu looked him deeply in the eyes and asked, how long did Patriarch stay here? Jiku fell silent, then after a moment, he said, not for long. He would come once a year and teach me a lot of stuff. The last time he left, he told me he might never come again. Cult Master Qin, is he gone? Qin Mu was silent for a moment, then came to a window to look at the dragon Qilin below. At this moment, the behemoth had straightened his ears and it was obvious that he was trying to eavesdrop on the conversation above. No, Qin Mu revealed a smile and said, Patriarch has probably become a god. Below, the dragon Qilin's ear lowered once again, and he just lay down on the ground with its tail spread out. Jiku came to his side and looked down. He saw Xiong Chia climbing onto the tip of the dragon Qilin's tail. The big fellow then raised it to let Xiong Chia slide down, causing this little girl to giggle non-stop with joy. I've met the dragon Qilin when I was young, but he doesn't seem to remember me. Jiku shook his head. You are bringing the little princess of True Heaven Palace and you still plan to reach that place alive? No wonder True Heaven Palace wants you to be captured so bad. Do you really don't need my help? For me to become the lord of a city, I naturally have some abilities and tricks. Father had taught me quite a lot of stuff. Qin Mu walked out of the building while shaking his head. You have your own family, and I won't implicate you. Fatty Dragon, Chia, let's go. Jiku saw them out of the manor and waved. Qin Mu seemed to notice it and turned back to wave back at him. Jiku couldn't resist to asking one last question, can I meet him again? After you become a god, you will probably see him, Qin Mu shouted back loudly. Jiku smiled while seeing them off, but his expression dimmed when they were out of sight. Every time he mentions father, he says probably. Father really is gone. The dragon Qin, on the other hand, was very happy. He became more hardworking as he ran while carrying Qin Mu. He was as fast as lightning, much faster than he was in the desert. Even though his thoughts were far-reaching at times, he still wasn't someone like Qin. When he heard Qin Mu saying that Patriarch had not yet died to Patriarch's son but that he had become a god, the big fatty couldn't help celebrating and deciding to work much harder. Qin Mu found it hard to lie to him. In the sea of fog in the living realm of the dead, Daoist Ling Jing was the boatman, Qin Mu thought to himself. Based on that, Patriarch should be in the living realm of the dead as well. Village chief gave me 8 Fengju coins, so I must go there once more and find the answer for myself. He took out the geographical map that Qin had gifted him and unfolded it to look around. After a moment, he found the location of True Heaven Palace and Fragrant Bloom City. He then raised his head to determine his location and immediately told the dragon Qin to sprint in the southwest direction. Right in front of them, a huge mountain stretched across the horizon, but it was somewhat strange. It was like a giant standing with 2 mountain peaks hanging downwards from its shoulders. But what was weird was that when the 2 mountain peaks came to the bottom, they became thick and circular, like 2 huge bells hanging above ground. While riding toward there, Qin Mu had 2 choices. He could cross between the 2 bells or take a detour around the strange body of the huge mountain. When the dragon Qin sprinted over, Qin Mu raised his head and saw an elegant woman in black floating up the mountain. She landed on its top, and there was a golden paper that looked like a seal near her. Qin Mu's pupil contracted and he saw that the woman was tearing off that paper on the mountain. Not good. Fatty dragon, rush through. Just as he said that, the huge mountain suddenly rumbled, and it raised its feet. The incomparably heavy mountain uprooted itself from the ground. Qin Mu knew that it was bad, and Carefree Sword immediately flew out of the sheath behind him. The sword whizzed through the air and went straight for the woman on the mountain peak. To catch bandits, first catch the ringleader. The mountain giant definitely required the magic power of a strong practitioner to sustain it. As long as the woman was killed, Qin Mu should be able to stop the transformation process. The woman turned back to take a look at him and sneered. Since you dared to kill a disciple of my Yu family, even if you are the father of the emperor, who cares? I'll send you to follow her. The mountain giant pulled out a leg and stomped on the ground, splattering mud in all directions. It then pulled out the other leg, slowly standing up. When the mountain giant stood up, the clouds were at its waist, and the 2 bell-shaped peaks were also raised. Rocks rolled down the secondary peaks, and when the huge chunks crashed down from the sky, they soon piled up on the road. The woman remained standing on the giant's head. Carefree Sword instantly spun and transformed into Drill Sword form to rush into the clouds. The woman from Yu family knew that her situation was also bad. She immediately shouted and flying hoops flew out. They went to bind Carefree Sword which was rushing at her from below. Ding, 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 ding. Concentrated explosions rang out like rain. The flying hoops bound up Carefree Sword and rapidly shrunk, however, they were immediately shredded into pieces by the spinning sword. The woman's cultivation wasn't weak, but the techniques of West Earth didn't take the path of strengthening themselves. Instead, they borrowed all things in the heaven and earth to fight, so their own battle power was much weaker when compared to that of divine arts practitioners of Eternal Peace Empire on the same realm. When compared to Qin Mu, this heavenly devil cult master who had made his way by killing everything on the way, the woman was much inferior. Carefree Sword was a divine sword and its sharpness was unmatched. After shredding all the hoops, its momentum didn't slow down at all. The sword pierced the woman's mandible and came out from the other side of her head. A trail of blood appeared on the mountain peak. Qin Mu called back his Carefree Sword back, but before he could let out a sigh of relief, he saw that when the mountain rocks fell from the 2 secondary peaks, they revealed the bodies of brass bells. The 2 peaks had really been bells and not mountains. They had only been covered by a layer of rocks. Even though Qin Mu had seen quite a number of such huge spirit weapons before, they were all cult legacy treasures. Even though the spirit weapons of West Earth weren't as exquisite as the spirit weapons in Eternal Peace Empire, cult legacy treasures were still extraordinary. They were treasures that contained the meticulous care of a strong practitioner throughout their entire life. That paper on the mountain peak should have been sealing this mountain giant. It should have been awakened long ago and then sealed by its owner to suppress the precious treasure of the family. The corners of Qin Mu's eyes twitched, for he realized that their situation had just turned for the worse. The mountain giant raised the two huge bells and swung them without explanation. They collided with each other, and their openings were right toward Qin Mu. The mountain giant wasn't awakened but simply sealed before. It always had spirit, which was why Yu family had sealed it here. When it was needed, they just had to peel away the seal and could mobilize the terrifying giant. Bang! The two huge bells collided, and a sound wave came rushing forward. Wherever it passed, the road would rise up and churn toward the dragon Qin. However, the greatest threat wasn't the raised road, but the ringing of the bells. It was created by the collision of two cult legacy treasures hitting each other. The aristocratic family of West Earth is so fierce. Fatty dragon, don't move. Qin Mu couldn't resist praising the enemy as his vital qi burst forth. Countless runes flew around his body, then swept forward to surround the dragon Qin. The devastating sound wave charged over, but before its destructive energy could reach the dragon Qin, the rune markings formed a teleportation formation. With the teleportation divine activated, Qin Mu disappeared along with the dragon Qin. The next moment, they appeared a mile away. If it was just Qin Mu himself, he could teleport 20 to 30 miles away. If he brought a person along, he could still teleport 10 miles. However, when bringing along a behemoth like the dragon Qin, a mile was already his limit. But the distance of a mile was simply too short for the mountain giant. With just one stride, it could probably travel over 10 miles. Qin Mu turned back to look and saw that the place where they had been at had flown up, trembling violently like streamers in the wind. Next, the road shattered into pieces from the violent sound wave. It actually destroyed over 20 miles of road, leaving nothing in its path. The mountain giant doesn't have magic power, but just by smacking the two huge bells together, he unleashed such a terrifying power. It's truly amazing. Qin Mu couldn't resist praising the enemy. The dragon Qin immediately began to while behind them the incomparably humongous mountain giant turned to take its first step. Qin Mu suddenly saw darkness over his head, and when he looked up, the huge foot of the mountain giant was already above them. The dragon Qilin's speed instantly increased drastically, surpassing the speed of sound with a few ups and downs. The fatty's improvement shocked Qin Mu. He didn't know what kind of spirit pills Fatty Dragon had eaten for his speed to surpass what it was in the past by so much. At such a dangerous situation, the dragon Qin couldn't be bothered about tricking his meal owner to improve his meals. He only cared about escaping with his life, and the speed he unleashed was simply astounding. Boom! Behind them, the huge foot of the mountain giant landed on the ground, creating a lake underneath itself. The next moment, he raised his hand to smash down a huge brass bell. The dragon Qin sprinted frantically, and the huge bell landed behind him. However, the power of that huge bell was extremely terrifying. When the sound wave entered the ground, its speed was 3 to 5 times faster than in the air. Behind the dragon Qin, the ground exploded, and it was a horrendous sight. The sound wave even reached the dragon Qin and blew him up in the air. Fire clouds immediately grew under the dragon Qilin's feet, and he began sprinting again. Behind him, the mountain giant swung the other huge brass bell while the other one was raised upward so they would hit each other again. Bang! The bells rang out, and where the two collided, ripples from the sound wave compressed equal space into physical substance. When the sound wave moved along it, its speed got even faster. Qin Mu's hair stood up on end as he hurriedly flipped backward and took out Moon Jade Eye. It lit up, and a beam of light went straight at the sound wave. Whang! The destructive sound wave was split into 2 halves by the beam, and 2 waves of terrifying energy brushed past the dragon Qin. The tremors made Qin Mu's scalp crawl, and he shivered not from the cold. If they had been struck by that sound wave, he, Xiong Chia and even the dragon Qin would have been shaken into countless shattered pieces and ceased to exist. West Earth still has its own knowledge, but this kind of knowledge is not good for cultivation. Qin Mu looked back and saw that mountain giant had been sliced by the beam of moon jade eye. Half of its left shoulder had collapsed, and the dragon Qin moved farther and farther away it. With the abilities of the mountain giant, it could no longer hit them with the sound waves. At that moment, the mountain giant suddenly squatted down. When Qin Mu saw that, his heart trembled violently. The mountain giant suddenly started to sprint, and its speed was simply unbelievable. My God! That's not right, there must be someone controlling this mountain giant. Otherwise, it couldn't so set on me and the dragon Qin, chasing us like mad. Qin Mu came to realization. The woman of Yu family that had removed the seal had already been killed, so it couldn't be her. It meant that another person had to have hidden close by, and their cultivation had to be extremely high as well, otherwise, how could they control such a huge mountain giant? Just as he thought that, a sword light suddenly flew through the sky, and a human head fell from midair, followed by a few sections of a corpse. It was a silver-haired old woman who had been holding a cane in her hands. That cane had also been severed into two. Qin Mu was slightly stunned. He looked at the mountain giant again and saw that it suddenly froze in place, giving up on his chase. It thus should have been the white-haired old lady who had controlled the mountain giant in the dark to attack them. Otherwise, how would the mountain giant have immediately attacked Qin Mu the moment it awakened? Fatty dragon, stop! The dragon Qin immediately stopped, even if he didn't understand why. Qin Mu opened cinnabar heaven's eyes to look at the mountain giant and saw a figure standing on its head. It was Ji-Ku. The sword light flew back from the clouds and swirled 2 rounds around him. Ji-Ku bowed and bade them farewell. Have a safe journey. Qin Mu also bowed as a parting. Thanks for your auspicious words. The figure then raised a flag to cover himself and vanished from the top of the mountain. Teleportation flag. Patriarch also gave him one. Qin Mu smiled. His light patriarch. They both look indifferent to worldly rewards, but actually, they are both very warm-hearted. Ji-Ku is no doubt Patriarch's son. Fatty Dragon, Patriarch has a successor. This video will end here.